Thanks for coming in today, everyone. We have our wonderful post-match panel. My name is Reka. I'm one of the M3s from the University of Missouri of Kansas City, and I'll be moderating this post-match panel with my wonderful colleague, Damien. If you want to
hmm
introduce yourself, Damien, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm Damien. I'm also a third year med student at Midwestern ASCOM in Chicago now, and we're both on the MSc, Education Wellbeing Rep, and Reka's mentorship also. So doing this, and very excited to have all of you here and speak to all you newly matched fourth years and kind of pick your brain on this and see what we can learn from you. So thank you all for being here and excited for this.
Yeah, and we'll just give everyone just like a minute or two to join in, and then we'll get started. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. We'll first have everyone on our panel introduce themselves. I'll have you guys introduce your name, where you went to medical school, where you matched for residency, and whether you did categorical or advanced, and then where you're going for intern year. So I'll have Kayleigh, if you'd like to start.
Hi, yeah, that's great. Hi everybody. So excited to be here tonight. My name is Kayleigh Crane. I'm coming from the Central Michigan University College of Medicine, where I'll graduate from in May. I matched into advanced program at UPMC in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in a transition year program in Spokane, Washington. So happy to talk about that with whoever is interested.
Okay, I can go next. Hey everyone, my name is John Macaulay. I go to medical school at LSU down here in New Orleans. I matched at UCLA in the advanced program, and then I'll be doing my intern year at UCLA Harborview, or Harbor, UCLA.
Hey guys, I'm Anish. I'm at University of Rochester in upstate New York currently. I'm matched at Mount Sinai in New York City, and it's a categorical program, so I'll be there for the next 4 years.
Hey everyone, I'm Danielle Broussard. I currently go to Nova Southeastern University in Tampa, Florida, and I matched at USF, or the University of South Florida. Its name is a little confusing because it's not in South Florida, it's in Tampa. So I get to stay here in Tampa, and it's a categorical program, so don't need to do a intern transitional year.
Hey everyone, my name is Bendrick. I go to Touro University, Nevada, matched into UC Irvine. It's an advanced program, and I'm doing my TY year in Desert Regional, which is in Palm Springs.
Hey guys, I'm Ashley. I'm a fourth year at Albany Medical College in upstate New York, and I matched at Albany Medical Center, and it's also categorical. So all 4 years will be here.
And Dr. Bulger, I'll have you introduce yourself as well.
Awesome. I wasn't sure if there were any students left. I'm Ashley Bolger. I am a program director in Cincinnati, and I'm just serving as a faculty representative mentor, if anything comes up that folks need help with. But you probably will not hear much from me, but glad to have you all here.
So thank you, everyone. It's great to see everyone doing so well and matching all over the country. But how we kind of wanted to run this was that if anyone on the call had any specific questions they wanted to throw in the chat right now, we can kind of go from there. And we also have a set of questions that people have submitted. So if anyone has anything specific off the top of their mind you'd like to touch on or ask these panelists, please let us know.
Yeah, and feel free to unmute yourself as well.
Mhm.
I think we'll go ahead and kind of start with the list of questions that we have.
Yep.
So one of the first questions that we had in regards to the programs that you matched at was, did you rotate at the program you matched at? And if yes, how did that experience influence your match outcome? If not, how did you connect well with that program to stand out outside of the interview?
Yeah, so I guess I could take this one first. Like I said, I matched at Mount Sinai in New York City, and I actually rotated there prior. I rotated there in August and September between those 2 months. And specifically, I was seeking out an away rotation in New York City because I knew that was a geographic location that I wanted to live in. It was a preferable place for me to be closer to family. It had programs that I was very interested in, so um, that is kind of how I chose Mount Sinai as one of my rotation sites, away rotation sites, and I would say, yeah, the obviously the experience there definitely influenced my. I think it had an impact on my match outcome, and I think that's a lot of people could say the same if they rotated there. You really get to see and get a feel for the type of faculty that they have there, the type of clinics that they do, the procedures that they have, and kind of like the robust nature of their didactics as well. So you really get a good grasp on what your training is going to be like. You also get to meet a lot of residents. I think that has a huge impact on understanding the culture of a program. I know that word gets tossed around a lot, but it's really about understanding who you're going to be with. For example, I'll be with current PGY2s and PGY3s next year. But if you're in an advanced program, it'll be just the PGY2s. So I think it's a really good way for individuals who are looking to either move to a different city um, or just check out different programs to really see what the city has to offer, but as well, it also helps you determine if the program's the right fit for you.
I can also answer this question. I did do a rotation where I matched in kind of like for the same reasons that Anish just talked about, but especially if you are looking for to be close to family and to be at a program that is near either, some sort of support system. I think it's a really good idea that you look at like you apply for auditions at those programs because for example, like my husband owns a business here where we live. And so for me, the only program in this area is the program that I matched at. But I wanted like that peace of mind for myself that this would be a good program for me, not just because of the geographical location, but because it had the things that I was looking for in a program and because that I would like match with the culture as well. So doing an audition not only helped me figure that out for myself, but it also, gave me FaceTime with the program for them to see too if they thought I would be a good fit with the program. So I think if you are somebody who is looking at geographical location as a huge consideration in your rank list or the programs that you're applying to, then I think that doing an audition at those programs to really see if that aligns is helpful.
All right. Well, in terms of aways, now that you've mentioned it, another question that people have had, while were on aways, what specifically do you think helped you stand out, like clinically, professionally, or interpersonally? And do you have any like general advice for people, with these aways upcoming and kind of how to approach them?
I can take this one. I did two aways, both at programs I was very interested in two very difficult geographical locations as well. Um, I think there is different things that you can do to prepare based on who you are before you get there. I like to study, not, yeah, I like to study. So there is actually the physical medicine and board review book, but somebody put it on a podcast and they just read that book out loud. And so if you know what units you're going to be on, like when I drove, because it was an 8-hour drive to one of mine and a 5-hour drive to the other, I just listened to those chapters. And that just gives you some of the working base framework. For me, I don't have a home program, so these were my first real PM&R rotations. And so I wanted to make sure that I could have those conversations, be informed around what was going on with patient care while I was there. I then think once you get there, obviously the things we've heard all of med school, be the first person to show up in the morning once you know what time's there. You can figure out little things like how to print the patient list for my residents, like very small things that make their day better is really what you're there to be doing. And also you're learning along the way. So ask questions, be engaged, figure out certain things. And because you're spending anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks at this place, not only can you ask questions about patient care, but ask them about, you spend so much time with these residents, ask them about what they like about their program, what they like doing there, show your interest in what they're doing outside of just taking care of patients on a day-to-day within their program. And then if you haven't heard yet, I think the number one rule in PM&R is if they're like, oh, you can, you're done for the day, we're done for the day, and the day hasn't ended yet, go see your patients in therapy. I can't tell you how many times I went and saw my patients, got to build really good rapport with them to where the patients were then telling the residents like, oh my gosh, like we really enjoyed Kayleigh coming to therapy yesterday. We got to talk about XYZ with her, or I got to come back and say, hey, this patient has this setup at home that we haven't been talking about. Is there any way we can kind of work around their therapy or what we've ordered to make sure that we're accommodating that? And I think the other really important thing is people in PM&R are really happy, so show up with a good attitude every day. I think an attitude can get you further than a lot of things in life, and so if you're really positive and energetic and want to be there, it can go a long way for you on your rotation.
I think another thing, just going off what Kayleigh's talking about too, is like, I think for the most part, like I did 3 aways and at all 3 places, I think all of them really understood that, all of it's still learning for me too. So if I don't know something, that's totally okay. And they're going to help teach you. But I think having like the basics down of being a good med student, asking questions, doing a good physical exam, bringing up things, being excited to be with your patients or with the team. I think that goes a longer way than you think. And like, again, you're going to learn those things. A lot of this might be your first PM&R rotations, but I think they know that. And I think that they will help you want to get into the field. So I think just having that good attitude and again, doing the basic things right, it goes a long way.
Yeah, I also just want to
Right.
add, oh,
Oh,
sorry.
I'm so sorry. John, quick follow-up on that one thing. As you were going through your aways, do you feel that there were more, there's like a higher bar that you had to meet in terms of like knowledge since you did have those previous aways
That's a really good
while still
question.
being a learner?
I think that definitely on the like say like my third rotation, the things that carried on that I would bring up if I knew certain things about things, those shined really bright. And so if you have some of that, like if you studied like Kayleigh, which is what you probably should do, but if you just keep up those things, but I think sometimes in attending or even during interviews, I got asked and they would ask, did you do a spinal cord injury, rotation, and they'll ask like certain questions about that, very basic things. So it is things that, this is going to be part of your career. So you should hopefully want to learn it. You want to keep it going and it's something that you're going to carry on. So I do think that some of that expectation will be there if they ask you that for sure.
I'm sorry, Anish, for interrupting you. Go ahead.
That was a great question. So yeah, I just wanted to add to the like how you can stand out part. Like I think one of the most underrated things in medicine is networking. You can start doing that early on too. You don't have to be starting an away rotation. In fact, I think it's more advantageous to do it before starting an away rotation. So that can include like reaching out to residents, getting to know them before getting them to know you. So showing them your personality. You could also like reach out to the PD of the program that you're interested in or programs that you're interested in, try to get to know them at conferences. I think getting your name out there is not just getting a bunch of publications or doing academic things. You could also just be a good person, and by doing that, you have to like kind of get out of your comfort zone and network if you're a sociable person. I think that that goes a long way and translates into um, a good impression during an interview later down the road. So start doing that early, especially if you're a first year or second year. And then third year, you have that opportunity during an away rotation. And then I also wanted to say, especially like when you're on the rotation itself, at an away rotation where they don't really know you as well, I think patient prepping the night before is definitely essential. Write down in a notebook 2 or 3 things about the patient, especially an outpatient clinic. Write down um, like the HPI on like what the patient's coming in for, and then write down like one or two facts that you can like that are learning points for you, so that you could like show off your knowledge when you're actually seeing the patient and afterwards when you're presenting. So those little things go a long way down the road.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to add in one more thing. Everything that everybody said has been really great so far and definitely worth mentioning. I was just gonna say that like sometimes also just like take a step out and like be aware that most of your inpatient time is going to be with PGY2s, and like I didn't know that going into my first rotation. Then I obviously gathered that as I went through. I did 5 aways. And the PGY2s, like, especially because it's more of like at the beginning of the year. So if you do July, August, like they are just kind of transitioning into their role as well. And so just realizing that like they're also learning a ton and have a lot on their plate while like they're also trying to teach you. And so just kind of taking a step back and realizing like you are there to shine and like find out as much as you can about the program, but also, these are going to be your colleagues someday. They could be your co-residents. So like if you think that they need a cup of coffee or that, I don't know, just like some pick me up words of encouragement or something like that, like just remember that you're human and they're there kind of not struggling but like also learning at the same time, so just having that respect as well.
Danielle, one thing, I know we have a couple questions, we have a hand up and a couple questions, but just since you are, I think, one of the only people that I've heard of doing 5-away rotations, how did you manage that? Because I've heard generally doing 3 to 4 is a lot, and kind of how you approached each one as you went, and still focusing on performing well towards the end of the fifth month at that point.
Yeah, I think my answer is going to be a little cliche. A lot of people had told me that too, that doing like 3 or 4 or like 5 would be pushing yourself. I really had like 5 top programs in my mind, and I was able to get auditions at all of them, and so I took them. And I just, I don't know, I guess my mentality and how I went into it is every rotation I went on, like, left me with more energy for the next one. Like, it's truly a field that I am meant to be in, and I just, like, really enjoyed all of my time on my rotations. And so I think knowing that you do have to, like, be there to show up every day, but also, like, enjoy your time, get to, like, the program, meet new people, you're meeting residents. So maybe just like trying to take that focus of like having to perform all the time and just like be you and show up. Um, I think also just knowing your capacity, right? So like not everybody can do 5 rotations, and that's okay. Like if that's not something that you think that you could do, then that's probably true. I have, a friend who just matched PM&R too, and she was like, I did 3 and I wish I would have done 1. So like you have to know what your capacity is as well.
I'll chime in really quickly too, because there is a financial aspect to it. So it's what you're willing to do, what you're able to do. I personally did 3 total rotations, 2 away and then 1 at my home institution, and they were all pretty different as well. So kind of echoing what Danielle said about just kind of being excited for the next one because they truly are a different experience. And then it's kind of fun to kind of compare, contrast to see how you want to go about your whole application cycle.
And that's all really great advice, and gives a lot of insight to us upcoming M4s who are heading into the away rotation season. It looks like Hannah, you have your hand raised. Go for it.
Thank you so much for hosting this. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. I just wanted to say that I heard that Anish brought this up a little bit, and I thought it was a really good segue for someone who's a second-year medical school student, just going back a few steps. If you don't have a home hospital, what would you do to get your foot in the door? And maybe like, how did all of you get your foot into the PM&R world in the first place? I would love to hear a couple of like introductory steps if possible. Thank you.
I think I can take this one because I don't have a home institution. I think what I first did was reach out to your local PMR docs. If you're from a DO school like me, I reach out to my local PMR docs and ask if I could rotate with them. Um, Also did like went through AAP, the mentorship program that is very valuable. The AOC PMR program is also valuable, or the Pathways to PMR. Uh, those programs are very valuable. They can help you find mentors and connect to other physicians, PMR physicians all across the world. So they've been a great, valuable resource for me. Um, and I think, as I just went through med school, I can always text them, email them. But I think one of the most important things is just to stay on top of your connections, kind of email them weekly or monthly, just kind of stay in touch and, they'll get you where you want to be. They gave me really great advice for like ERAS and stuff and interviews. So I think just start networking through those programs and then get your foot in the door through that.
I think I can also speak maybe a little bit because I also didn't have a home program. And I think one thing that maybe we don't do as much that we can do in PM&R is cold emailing. So I think specifically physiatrists are really great about answering usually. So if you find somebody that you really are like, wow, their career path kind of mirrors what I want to do, or where they're at is where I want to be, go ahead. If you can find their email, shoot them an email. Most of the time, I would say 9 out of 10 have responded to me. And sometimes, you just have one brief meeting with them and maybe you'll see them at a conference later and say hi. And sometimes those interactions continue for years on end. I think the other thing that is maybe something people don't think about as much. When you think about all the different webinars that go on in the PM&R state space, specifically for me, between my M1 and M2 year, I watched the Road to Fellowship series. I don't know why that was not like where I was in life, but at the end of all of those series, those physicians will put their contact information. And so if you're interested in spinal cord injury, go to the spinal cord injury one. If you're interested in stroke, if you're interested in brain injury, and you can start to meet some of those people who are engaged on a national level, who go to these conferences, who go to these meetings, and start reaching out. And even if they don't have the capacity to take you on as a mentee, maybe they know somebody in your area or somebody that they could set you up with. And so I think it's looking for those creative solutions when you don't come from a home program to figure out, how do I take my next step and how do I find people in positions where I want to be?
Thank you so much.
Okay, so now I'm going to segue a little from away rotations and addition rotations to applications. So one of the questions we had was, how did having 20 program signals influence your application strategy? Whether about where you signaled, how many non-signal programs you applied to, and did you receive interviews from non-signal programs?
I can start off. I think because this year was the first year with 20 signals, it was kind of this, there wasn't like a outline for a strategy. So everyone probably had a different way to go about things. Me personally, I received interview invites from places I signaled and places I didn't signal. I think it just depended, it was so program dependent this year on who was really valuing the signals and then who maybe wasn't just yet. So I think definitely look out for the data on that and to see how to go about it in future cycles. It was so hard to tell for us.
How many did you apply to that weren't signaled? Out of curiosity, Ashley.
I think I applied to like 39, but that may have been a little bit overkill because I do think in general, most of your interview invites are going to be from the places that you signal.
Mhm.
I applied for 36 programs and um, I got 0 interviews from the non-signals and about 13, 14 out of the 20 school signals I got. But I also know that programs really care about the connection you have to that program. So for example, I applied for some New York programs because I like this I like to be in the city and visited New York a couple times, but the 5 New York programs only got one interview. So I'm not saying that I deserve one, but I just saying that you would need try carefully like think of a connection you have to that program and maybe that put that in your personal statement. If you haven't done a way there or you don't have a family connection there, just to make sure that they don't screen you out.
I will say the other big thing to think about is the more programs you apply to in general, the more interviews you'll have. So if you hear somebody say, well, I only got 2 non-signal interviews, well, I only applied to 10 programs that I didn't signal. So that's a very low sample size, where if you apply to like 40 more programs than what you signal, more likely you're going to have more interviews come back from those areas. And I think the other thing to think about is it's a level playing field in the sense that everybody has 20 signals. So everybody's trying to figure out what to use and how to do them. And so I wouldn't let it get too controlling in your head of like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? How am I going to do these signals? Because at least for me personally, when I sat down to make my list after like 9 programs, I was like, okay, what are the 11 other programs that I'm going to use my signals on that I really care to show that I'm interested in? So I know people get really like worked into the weeds about the signals, but just remember that every applicant in PM&R is in the same boat as you with those 20 signals. And so just figure out what kind of applicant you are and how to best strategically use them for you.
Yeah, for me personally, I really only applied to the schools I signaled. So I think I only applied to like 23 programs. So I only got one from a program I didn't signal. I think it's like Kayleigh was saying, like everyone's saying, is really do it based on where you see yourself in the future. So use your signals to places that you think you'll be at or you would like to be at. And you don't have to over apply. I think it's going to get more and more narrow uh, with the 20 signals now over the years. I know this was the first year we had this many, but I think it's going to start being a pattern where you're not going to get interviews outside of your current signals. So, um, kind of take this year with a grain of salt since it was like the first year it was rolled out and see what you can see where you see yourself in the future as the way to utilize your signals. At least that's the way I did it.
Yeah, that's awesome advice considering it's a very new topic this year of how many signals we get. So I think we appreciate that insight.
I do think, Dr. Bolger, just to call on you as a program director and, navigating all these changes, do you have any insight on the 20 signals and having strong connections to place and the geographical connection and all that from actually being on the other side of the application that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I was trying to stay quiet. No, I'm happy to help. So I was also part of the working group that made the decision to go to 20 signals. So I probably have a good amount of background knowledge, but I do think, again, the official data hasn't been released to my knowledge. At least I haven't seen anything from the AAMC and all that good stuff. But if the trend goes the way that other specialties have gone that have transitioned to that, quote unquote, big signaling, I think Anish, you've hit the nail on the head. Like I think you're gonna see the data. My guess is that it's rare to get an interview outside of the programs you signaled. I don't have that data, but that's what every other specialty that has sort of done this transition has seen. So I would encourage you definitely to look at the most recent AAMC data. It usually comes out within like a month or two of the match happening. So I would expect it in the next several weeks for them to release those results. But I think somebody else mentioned it's very program dependent. That's my gestalt. I think every program is going to use a signal differently. There's going to be some that use it as a screener. There's going to be some that interview half that signaled, half that didn't, and it's going to be you can't possibly as a student predict what each program is going to do with all the signals they get. I think there's so many factors that go into why a program chooses to use signals the way they do. And so what I typically tell my students is, think through, like you guys are all saying, like, where do you want to be? Now, like maybe don't use all 20 signals on the very top 20 programs or whatever you guys perceive as the top 20 programs. I typically try to, back in my day, we always used to do the like, a third of them should be reach schools, a third should be safety, and a third should be somewhere in the middle. And I would say like use signals like that a little bit, however you identify those, but don't, kind of how Kayleigh said, don't get into the weeds. Just go with your gut and like where you think you're going to want to go. Because the fact of the matter is, you're also going to interview with these places, and some of them, what you see on paper, you may go interview and you're like, "Ooh, that was not what I thought, and that is not the program for me." And that is okay too. Like, it's okay to not be able to predict exactly what you want before this whole process starts. So, but yeah, that's my 2 cents. Hopefully that's helpful. You guys did a great job giving advice. That's why I didn't pipe in. So,
Thank you for that insight. So I think now that we talked about the program signals, another new or aspect of the application is the SLOE, the standardized letter of evaluation. Do any of the math students have any advice on like obtaining the SLOE, or like the timing of asking attendings to write one, and I guess using it effectively in their applications for ERAS?
I guess I didn't really have like a strategy with it. I handed it to the like letter writer who knew me the best, but I didn't really like think about it too much when using it. I also think that that's since this is like the first year that was utilized, I'm not sure exactly how much programs took that into account. I know it was definitely forget the exact numbers, but I know a lot of programs required it. So definitely get that. But in terms of a specific strategy, I personally did not have one in terms of handing it to someone that would like write a specific way or not. So yeah, I don't know if there's an answer to that yet, or if anyone else had a different strategy, would like to hear it.
I would say I asked for the SLOEs the same way I asked for a LOR. Because correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I believe the SLOE, the writer can still add a blurb that is personalized to the applicant. So um, I didn't really see much difference. But yeah, again, like Anisha said, this was the first year, so we will see.
I think the way I approached it was that I went and looked at what like the like on the website what was entailed for the grading and how the blurbs were going to be put out. And so I wanted to do an inpatient rehab rotation because I just felt like it lined up the best with it in my eyes. And so like I was with my inpatient rotation, I was with the same team for a whole month. And so then halfway through, since it's so new, majority of your attendings probably don't know what it is either. And so like I sat down with my attending and like walked her through like, hey, I'm going to ask for a letter of rec and this is the new thing. And so I walked her through like what it's going to look like and showed her where she's going to have to go and like to download it and everything like that. I felt like that helped and it kind of gave her an idea of what she should be looking for and kind of like brought up things that I could do that would be more helpful or that I can show to do, I guess, clinically. So I felt like that was my best way. But I think similar to a regular letter of rec, like letting them know you're going to be asking for one and what you can do to be doing better is the biggest thing. And finding a letter writer who you think you shined with, I think is still the gold standard there.
Yeah, I'll just add on to what John had mentioned. Would definitely look at the evaluation on the AAP website because it is there for you to see what you're getting evaluated on. And some of the things that I asked, like coming up with a plan for the patient or, doing a physical exam on them, things like that. You want to be able to make sure that you have the chance to do that for the person who's writing your SLOE. Um, so I highly recommend looking at that and then figuring out like, okay, while I'm on this rotation, have I had the chance to do that? Or do I need to sit down with one of the attendings or residents that I'm working with and ask them, I'm hoping to get this filled out by XYZ attending, and what do you think would be the best way to approach like how I can display these skills? Um, so having that plan going into it, I think, is very helpful.
And Danielle, to kind of touch upon that, you were talking about kind of the process and asking for letters. Was there a specific timeline you had in mind? Did you do that pretty early on into the rotation, or does anyone have any advice on that?
I think so. I think one kind of like strategy I use for that too is that you do get your schedule for your rotations ahead of time. And so when you're on your inpatient, this was the rotations that I did anyway, when you're on your inpatient time, I think for me, I had more one-on-one time with the attending. When I was in the outpatient clinics, I felt like I was more with like various attendings every day or every other day. Um, so I really tried to like use my inpatient time to sit down with those attendings and like at the very maybe like the second day or something, sit down with them and say, I'm really hoping to get an SLOE from this rotation. These are the things that I know I have to demonstrate. I would like to follow these patients so that I can do that to show that. Um, Otherwise, I know I had been told last year that like maybe halfway through the rotation, you can sit down and ask. I don't know what everybody else did. I think that there's different ways, and there's also like a vibe thing too, like do you feel like this would be a person who would give you a good letter of recommendation just by how you're interacting with them and connecting with the attending? There's some attendings I only spent a couple days with that I felt like I could really ask them for a letter of recommendation. So I think just kind of feeling out that connection that you're having with those physicians.
Thank you for that, Danielle. And then kind of to go into another component of the application, one question we had was, did you apply to more categorical or advanced PM&R positions? And what was your reasoning behind that strategy?
I'll start this one off. I think I ended up applying to more categorical just because the field as a whole is moving more towards categorical. More and more programs year after year are adding in that intern year. And additionally, just geographically where I didn't apply, categorical was more favorable. However, I strongly desired an advanced program. And I also strongly desired my intern year to be somewhere I had never lived before. I know that's usually not what you hear from people. People either want to go home or they want to stay where they are or they want to be close to where they're going next. So if anybody's interested in kind of doing the transition where you're not doing that and you're going somewhere very far away, all but like two of my intern year, whether they were TY or prelim, were somewhere really far out west. And I am not from out west and I've never lived out there. And so I think you have to figure out what is important to you and what you want and remind yourself that you are living your life while you're doing all of this. I think we get really lost and like, hey, we're going to be a resident, we're going to work really hard, but what do those hours look like outside of the hospital and what's important to you, your family members, your loved ones? And so for me, that was moving out to Washington for a year. And so I think there's a lot of noise that can sometimes happen where you're like, oh man, would it be smarter to do this over that? But really, if you feel strongly that way, I would really encourage you guys to pick what you desire because this is kind of the first time in med school we get to be a little bit selfish when we make those rank lists. And so if you want to do it, I would highly encourage it. There was only one other PM&R resident that I knew of who had done that, who had gone somewhere else and then moved completely across the country for their program. So I talked a lot to her about her experience before I did so and made that decision. But that is just kind of my own experience. I know everybody else probably has a different method because everybody has different thought processes and different desires for what they want for that first year.
I can go next. I In terms of applying, I didn't necessarily have a strategy for categorical versus advanced. But then later on, as you start to like go through interview season and start to think about, how you want to rank, I personally did rank the categorical programs higher than the advanced ones, just because, and everyone's going to have their different reasons, but I was starting to, I don't know if I feel like moving twice. And that is a very valid reason. So, you know, whatever works for you, whatever's important to you.
Now, in terms of, I guess, finding or identifying your TY or prelim programs, do you have any more insight on like how you really identified them, figured out what you wanted out of them, aside from like location or, desire to move twice? Any other insight that you guys may have on that specifically?
I really think the geographical location is a big thing for the TY and prelims since you're really going there for that 12 months. You're not really going to be spending a long time there. So if it's easier for a transition period between your med school and residency to be in a TY that's closer to your advanced program, then I would say try to aim for um, having that prelim year be in a city or a location in which you are actively trying to match for your advanced program. At least I think, for example, for me, I mainly applied to like Northeast programs, so I mostly picked all Northeast TYs or prelims as the programs that I applied to. So I think that could just allow for some simplicity, especially you probably don't get that much time to transition between first and second year of residency. So having that proximity may be more beneficial.
I also did what Anish did. Mostly wanted to stay in Southern California, so I focused all my TY prelim programs I applied to in the Southern California area, but like sprinkle a little bit in North California. But also want to say that um, the TY prelim programs, they're not as realistically speaking, I look at the aims their data from their past history. I had to look at some programs that never take DOs, and that was something unfortunate, but some programs that I had to eliminate. So just kind of keep in mind, don't just throw your money at a prelim or TY program just because they're in a very desirable spot. I also look at, your chances of interviewing there if you're DO. So yeah.
Bendrick, speaking of being a DO, and I know this was answered in the chat, but I figured for people not reading it, could the DO students kind of elaborate on their experience taking Comlex and also step two if you did, and what went into your thought process on that, and generally, or if any of your classmates that you know that also matched into PM&R, generally what the consensus is and kind of what your calculus was in either taking it or not taking
Yeah, so personally, I took both just because my school gave me UWorld and I was very comfortable with the UWorld questions and they most realistically they're very similar to the USMLE questions too. So my test scores when I did my practice exams, I was much higher on the USMLEs. So I did the USMLE too because that would give me a higher chance. But also took Comlex and my Comlex, I wasn't very used to the Comlex questions, so my scores weren't as high. So I decided to take USMLE. But so I think you can match with just Comlex only. I know there's 7 people in my class that match PM&R, and I know a couple of them that only did Comlex and they still matched to their top 5 programs. So I think it kind of just depends on you, how comfortable you are with the tests. If you're very comfortable with both tests, I would just say you can just take Comlex and do really well, but you don't think you can do well on Comlex like I did. I took both USMLE and Comlex just so that I can increase my chances.
I would kind of mirror Bendrick's answer. I also took both Comlex and STEP, and I also used UWorld as my like resource to study. So I was taking practice exams that were both COMLEX practice exams and MBME practice exams. And so I felt at the time that I was going to do good on STEP, and so I ended up taking it, but I had not really planned to take it until I started studying. So I think that one of the pieces of advice that I would say to DO students is if you're doing well on practice exams, and you feel like you know, are going to do well on it, then you can decide to take it, but it also is $800, so um you know, spending $800 twice on two exams is a lot of money. I think also just knowing like what are your top programs, right? And do they value STEP more than COMLEX? Do they look at your COMLEX score? That's kind of hard to know, but you can talk to, you know, residents, other people who have matched there, and they might be able to give you like a little bit more insight on that. But I think it definitely comes down to just a personal decision at the end. I also have friends who at my institution who matched PM&R that didn't take STEP. So it's definitely possible to match and not take STEP.
All right, I think we're gonna jump into a little bit about just general qualities and strengths when it comes to becoming an applicant. So the next question that we had was, what do you think stood out on your application that made you a successful applicant, and what also made you stand out during your interviews?
I can go. I think something that kind of came up a lot always was like kind of having, I know it's like kind of the whole have a what's it called? Like have a full application or have a lot of different things. So having trying to have research or trying to have other extracurriculars and being involved and things like that. I think something that came up the most though is some like a lot of my personal interests, like my involvements in other clubs that weren't necessarily PM&R related and being involved in things that I kind of wanted to do, some of the volunteering I was doing outside of medicine. And I feel like those were always kind of things that were kind of brought up a lot of the time. I do think having a lot of like you know, make sure you're doing your best on your test scores, trying to get as much or any research onto your application is always great, and trying to have kind of the well-rounded application. But I do think a lot of the times it was always things that, like I was a personal trainer for all 4 years of medical school, and it was always kind of brought up of like, oh, it's something I really like to do. I wanted to do outside of medicine, and it's something I just kept as an interest of mine. And so those kind of things were always brought up, and you know, your hobbies section and all that kind of stuff.
I think what stood out on my application was I used to work full time in college and for this like Asian bakery chain called 85 Bakery, but I think all the interviewers really liked how I had prior work experience and how used my work experience and translated to med school. And they all know that the previous work experience is really important in residency because basically work. So they really like to have that have all those skills and experiences already. And besides that, I think the other ones, like some niche hobbies, I really like a lot of interviews asked about my credit card strategies and like how do I utilize them, how do I use all those get free flights or free hotels. So yeah, just having like something interesting to talk about, I think is a good strategy to do. And make sure you're passionate about that because a lot of them like are in that space as well. So they kind of know if you're BSing or not.
Yeah, I would agree with both of what they said. I had prior work experience as well. I was a dietitian prior to medical school, so I got asked a lot of questions about that, like how I would maybe integrate that into PM&R. Also got asked a lot about my hobbies. I'm a big sourdough baker, and so they all really wanted to know like what I'm cooking or baking now. So just like where you spend your time outside of medical school and like Bendrick said, like what you're passionate about. They want to know that you're just like a normal human person, you know, human outside of medical school and that you have passions in a life.
Yeah, I would totally agree with all of that. I think they really didn't ask many questions related to research or scores, like board scores or like clinical experiences. Yes, there were more of that related to the other two, but I think it's more about that 10 experiences section more than anything else. Personally, I think what stood out for me was some of the leadership positions I had, some specifically like some involvement with like MSK ultrasound interest groups, and this other, like I run a basketball program called Crossovers and Conversations, where we use basketball to provide as like a platform to provide free health education for underserved youth in my community. So, I think having two or three of your top experiences be related to something that you really can talk about, uh, I I think that's the most beneficial way to go about this because that'll be what gets brought up in like pretty much every single interview. Like I said, they're not really going to talk about your research or your scores as much as your extracurriculars. So make sure you're doing good work in that reign of things, but also um, make sure that you're also being a well-rounded student because that opens the doors initially.
I just wanted to throw something else in there because it's not something that gets talked a lot about on. There is a section of the application that asks if you have, I don't know exactly how it's worded, but basically if something kind of major has happened in your lifetime while you're in school, something like that, that has had an impact. It is an optional section. Please do not feel like you have to put something in there. In fact, they recommend if something doesn't really feel strongly convicted to go in there to not put anything in there. But if you are questioning if something in your life has really changed or impacted you and you want to share it, and share like, I did all this while this was going on, or, this is the type of person that I need to be, or this impacts the way I view the world now. I would highly recommend sharing it. I had something occur that I needed to share, and I got mixed reviews from people on whether or not that should happen. And I, at the end of the day, after I completed my interview season, was really glad that I did because one, I knew that um, what programs were really going to be supportive of me in that time. And then additionally, it kind of helped me talk through some different things with different programs and learn their culture more and how they um, talk to residents about things like that when life things happen, because like I said earlier, life happens while we're going through this. So I just want to make sure that if you feel like you should strongly fill that out, if that's important to you, that you feel that you can do that because it is important and people will talk to you about it on your interviews.
And then kind of to wrap up, was there anything else during your application process, your aways, or during your interview season that you would like to share to the students, kind of something that was really impactful for you that kind of helped make your decision as to what programs you were interested in, how you created your rank list?
I'll go again. This is kind of a little bit like this, kind of not. I think it's really easy to get really stressed out during this period. I know I was a mess, and you're trying to connect all these moving parts and pieces. But once you get into interview season, like these people are going to be your colleagues no matter what. And so whether or not you're on an interview and you're like, man, yeah, I would love to go here, you're like, maybe this isn't for me. Just remember, like, you're gonna work with these people for the rest of your life, so have fun and get to know them. I think that was the best part is like learning little connections or getting to meet them, and then, going to the conferences and seeing them again and getting to meet them in person. And I think if you go into each interview and you're like, man, I'm really excited to see who I'm going to meet today. Like, what story are they going to tell me about their selves? What story am I going to share about myself? I think that helps take some of the pressure off, and also makes it more enjoyable because you will have Zoom fatigue by the end of the season. There's no way around it.
Well, I think that was wonderful advice to end on. I
That was
know
a
that,
great way to end it.
yeah, there's a lot happening as we kind of get into our M4 year. So I appreciate, I'm sure a lot of us appreciate the heartfelt advice about having fun, kind of really becoming introspective and understanding where do you really want to be in the next 3, 4 years. So with that, we want to kind of keep everyone's time in mind. That's kind of the end of the questions that we have. We want to take a moment to thank our panelists for your time and your effort in doing a phenomenal job in answering all of the questions, and then also being super active in the chat. That was awesome to see. Damien, do you have anything else to add?
Well, I see they're already beating me to the punch, but if any of the panelists are comfortable sharing their information or contact information for everyone to reach out, that would be great. If not, totally fine. But thank you very much for everyone coming. It's been great. And also for anyone that's on the call that submitted some specific IMG questions, there will be an IMG webinar later on that will touch on all of that on a separate call. So I think that's it. So have a great night, guys. Thank you again. And thank you to all our panelists and everyone that, pitched in.